Okay, so what do we have in store for today? Before we jump into the vision of Automate 365 and what we are doing right now for the future, I would really like to start this with guiding you a little bit through the past, so how it all started, and I will also address some of the most relevant issues and challenges that our customers face when automating the creation of Microsoft 365 assets. I will also talk a little bit about how Automate 365 addresses some of those issues. We will go through a couple use cases. I will also present a little bit of our roadmap, and then I will open up for questions. And I encourage you, by the way, to share your camera in case you want to to participate. So we would like to make it as ongoing and easy as possible. So feel free to share the camera. All right. So why Automate 365? And before we talk about the new features, just a little bit of showing how it fits into the BindTuning offering. Just a quick overview about what we are doing as BindTuning. I believe that most of you know us for our offering for SharePoint and Office 365. So design, build, accessibility, the tools you know for creating those awesome workspaces. Our offering also for Microsoft Teams, which brings in some of those good things into the Microsoft Teams experience. And then you know that in the past years, we have created a gallery of pre-built templates that package scenarios both in SharePoint Office 365, but also in Microsoft Teams, and allow the automated creation of these spaces. And those are pre-built. And in this process, we also developed and created a different offering, which is called Automate 365, and probably not all of you know it, that allows currently the deployment of custom templates that are customer specific at scale for any of these environments. And this is the offering that I'm going to guide you through what we are working on right now and our vision for the future. And before we talk about the new features, as I said, I'll take you through a little bit of history. So how did it all start? But in 2017, we landed a project with Nokia. This is a public project. We have a case study published on this. And it was for a specific center. It's called the Nokia Project Delivery Center. It's located in Portugal. And basically, it provides project management support for telco firms, but also for large enterprise customers. And at the time, before we started the project, Nokia kind of employed several different channels to share information with their customers. In particular, they were relying a lot on emails, on phone calls to keep the project teams in sync. So unfortunately for the customer and for the team, this meant that critical project data was many times stored in files in PowerPoint, in Word documents, in spreadsheets, and many times in email threads, which were not necessarily accessible to the entire project team. So the goal for Nokia was to be able to provide customers with a unified communications channel. And their vision was to structure the sharing of all that information as part of a SharePoint portal. So it involved the creation of centralized project information, and the goal was to create two types of portal. Every time they engaged with a new customer, they wanted one portal per customer, and every time they landed a new project for a customer, they wanted to be able to create a new portal for that project. So we already had at the time the provisioning engine, so part of the Automate 365 offering created. And we started implementing a lot of what right now is the Automate 365 platform at that time. So if you look at the right side of the screen, you will see sort of the process that was implemented. So basically, every time a new project was starting, the project manager would actually create a list, a new item on a list that managed all the project's information, and it was a normal SharePoint list. And this is a view of that SharePoint list actually using one of our web parts, but it was a very simple process. So adding to a SharePoint list a new line that says we have a new project for this customer with these details. And that simple addition to the SharePoint list would actually start the provisioning engine and the deployment process. And based on a template that was pre-created, a new project portal was automatically deployed, and the process would take approximately less than 10 minutes. So this was the vision for Nokia, and we actually started developing a lot of what we have as Automate 365 based on this vision. And what we realized during that project, and with our experience post project and in the past years with Automate 365, is that companies and organizations really have a lot of internal processes like that one to manage different types of information. And this information can be related to a lot of different things. We can be talking about managing departments, managing projects, managing marketing campaigns, managing product development, school classrooms, for example, or we can be managing procurement, subscriptions, complaints. So a lot of different scenarios. And the truth is, each of these different scenarios normally may require different types of data, and it is kept in different types of structures. So some customers will maintain that information on a SharePoint list, others may be keeping that information on an Excel file, some information is kept on the Azure AD, and so on and so on. And ideally, for these scenarios, most of our customers would love to have structures in Microsoft 365, so it can be a SharePoint site or a Microsoft Teams team or a Power Automate flow, so some asset that needs to be created to support that process. But normally, the creation of those assets is done manually, and that creation is really time-consuming and expensive. What we have at this point with Automate 365 and what we have been developing in the last 4 years is what is represented in this diagram. So on one end, and in the beginning of the process, we normally have IT creating what are called templates, and these templates can be sample teams or sample websites. Those templates are stored within the customer's Automate 365 templates gallery, and at a different moment in time, upon request, those templates are then deployed, and the deployment can be one item at a time or at scale. So we can deploy multiple items at a time, depending on the request. And what we are doing right now as BindTuning is really expanding this concept, really to address some of the requests that we already had in the Nokia case that allowed us at that point to connect to existing processes and existing triggers, as was in that case, the case of the SharePoint list. So if you recall what I just mentioned, the project manager was the one starting the process by adding a new line to a SharePoint list, and that was actually the trigger. And that is part of our vision right now. So to start, we want to be able to include not only SharePoint sites and Microsoft Teams in the scope of those templates, but also address different types of elements namely Power BI dashboards. We can be talking about project. We can be talking about a lot of different assets that can be packaged within the template that will obviously allow for the deployment of different elements and different structures. But also, as I said, we want and we are implementing the ability to trigger the deployment process based on whatever existing internal process you already have in place. For that, we are creating a concept that we call the automation project. And the automation project actually defines a lot of different things. So it defines what the data source is. As I said, it can be a SharePoint list, it can be an Excel file, it can be a CRM system. We also define and allow the definition of triggering rules. So what actually starts the process of the automated deployment. We allow the definition of mappings, and this is really relevant. We already have that in the case of Nokia. And what this basically says is when adding a new element to the data source, so in the case of Nokia, for example, when we were adding a new project, there were different types of information that were being added to the list, namely the name of the project, what's the start date, what's the end date, what's the description, and so on and so on. And those elements, they can actually be mapped into elements in the final asset that is being deployed. So if I'm deploying, for example, a SharePoint site, some information that lies in the original data source will be translated into elements within that site that is being deployed. At the same time, this automation project includes other type of information, namely, if there are any approval workflows that have to be in place before the automated deployment actually starts. So we have multiple types of data sources that, when updated, actually trigger the deployment. As I said, these can be of many different types. And at the end of the process, not only we are able to have on-request automation, as we have currently, but also automatically triggered deployments, as is the case that we had in the Nokia project, but also scheduled automations. And in the end of the process, and to give us the ability to address the entire workflow of any process, we are now also able to call back to additional workflows, or let's say to a logic app that has to take place after this deployment ends, or any other final triggering that needs to be addressed. So let me give you just a brief overview of how this all works from beginning to the end. In the beginning of the process, we will have normally an admin user that has access to Automate 365. And this admin user will be in the process of creating the template. So in this example, we are talking about a SharePoint portal. There is a sample portal that will be the base of that template. And by using the BindTuning framework, that admin user will be able to save that site as a template. And this process can be repeated many times. Using the interface within BindTuning, the admin user is able to test the deployment. And when happy with the version that is being deployed, so if I'm testing multiple times, I will get to the point where I say, yes, this is the template I want to really save. The user will be able to select the best deployment that actually represents what has to be saved as the final template, and they will add the additional configuring for that automation project, namely the rules, the mappings, etc., and save all this as a project within Automate 365. And from this moment on, whenever an end user triggers the process by adding a new element and making an update to a data source, so either it is the SharePoint list or a CRM system, whatever, this triggering starts the automation process, and Automate 365 actually provisions the elements that have to be provisioned. Either it is one element that is being created, multiple elements at scale. We can be talking about dozens, hundreds of elements at the same time. And when the process is finalized, it can also, as I said, call a callback and set, let's say, a Power Automate flow or any other process that has to take place when the deployment is done. Let me just show you some use case scenarios that are very concrete. This first use case is the case of procurement. There are multiple organizations that have very large procurement processes, and typically there has to be literally a project in place to manage that procurement. Teams, not only internal teams from the company organization, but also supplier teams have to have access to an asset. And this flow here really represents what would happen when a new procurement project is started. So basically, that there is an initial phase of saving the template that is sort of common to any Automate 365 flow. And at a later moment in time, we would have a procurement manager create a new procurement project, let's say, for example, on a SharePoint list. And that addition to the list would actually trigger the process in Automate 365 to create, for example, a procurement project portal in SharePoint that would be accessible to the internal and external teams, while at the same time, for example, provisioning a Microsoft Teams team to also support the same procurement process, or, for example, a Slack group. Another example, the creation of customer portals based on a new customer being added to a CRM system. So in a case like that, we would also have the initial phase of the creation of the template within BindTuning. And at a later moment in time, when, let's say, a sales development representative adds a new customer to CRM, this actually triggers the deployment of a customer portal in SharePoint. And obviously, if any approval has to take place, those workflows will also occur before starting the provisioning. Another example, the example, and this is a very common example these days, schools, universities having to create teams in the beginning of every semester. We know that this requires a level of scale that is really very considerable. And although the creation, namely in the education space, the creation of teams at scale is sort of addressed by Microsoft School Data Sync, the truth is that those teams are normally created empty, and there is no content in them. And there are different challenges, for example, in the case of schools, that need to be addressed. Namely, the standardization and unification of content for all classes, for example, under the same topic and for the same level. This type of flow actually allows to address those issues and address those concerns. So the flow we see here is the flow that BindTuning provides currently. The creation of the templates in Microsoft Teams happens at a certain moment in time. Those templates are saved into the gallery, and then at a later moment in time, and this is how we are addressing it right now, IT admins actually create the groups in Azure AD. And then they go to BindTuning, selecting bulk lists of Azure AD groups and deploying the templates for those AD groups, and basically automatically creating all those teams at scale with content, with assignments, everything provided in Microsoft Teams. This process is now being converted into a completely automated flow. And when the IT admin makes the creation of the Azure AD groups, this actually triggers the provisioning of all teams in Teams. So this is the type of process that not only makes sense to the education scenario, but also to any scenario where the creation of Microsoft Teams in bulk is required. For example, let's say a chain of stores that when a new store is opening, there has to be the creation of a new team in Microsoft Teams for that store. This is an example that can also be addressed with this type of process. We are really excited about this tool. We know that it solves a lot of issues and challenges when it comes to the automation and creation of different Microsoft 365 assets. And we have seen tremendous positive impact and feedback from the customers that have been working with us so far. We are on a phase of heavy investment in Automate 365. I can tell you that we have a lot of different features being developed as we speak. If we look at the first swim lane, you see that we are in the process of evolving those triggering data sources. And right now, at this moment, we are starting with CSV files, but by the end of the year, we expect to have multiple data sources supported, and also the connectors to flows, as you've seen in the diagram, before the deployment process and after the deployment process. By the end of the year, we will have those connectors in place. At the same time, we are implementing additional functionality, namely supporting security groups, and I'll explain exactly what this is and what we are doing in this context, improving the in-context help of the tool for the end user, but we will also use this technology to leverage auto update on BindTuning products, and I mean the rest of the BindTuning offering, so themes, web parts, accessibility tool. All those will be, we will have auto updates provided by using the same Automate 365 technology. The roadmap for 2022, we have basically two main sections where we will be working heavily. The first one, and it has to do with the security groups. We have identified that a lot of our customers are still using AD groups, and those AD groups cannot be converted into Microsoft 365 groups, taking out the possibility of the creation of teams for those groups. So what we are right now developing is a tool that we call Automate 365 Group Sync. We hope to have it available in the beginning of 2022. And I believe that this will really be a freemium tool, and it will allow the synchronization of these security groups with Microsoft 365 groups. We will also be doing a lot of work in lifecycle management, so identifying inactive workspaces, enforcing workspace management policies, deleting, archiving, so all the process associated to maintaining the workspaces that are being created by Automate 365. Okay, and I think that we are close to the time, but we still have some minutes for questions. I would like to open up for discussion, so please feel free to share. Lily, I don't know if we have any questions in the chat?
Yep, we have one from Anthony. He wants to know if we support the new built-in SharePoint site templates.
Okay, yes, that is something that is being discussed at this point. And Anthony, I know that you have been working with us for quite some time now, and you know how much we like to support everything that comes out of the box. So I can't tell you when it will be available, but it will definitely be part of this effort that we are doing. We already support a lot of the templates that Microsoft made available, and namely in the lookbook. It's not exactly the same thing, but the new structure that Microsoft is providing for templates is something that we are addressing right now in this development. Any other questions?
I don't see any more. Beatrice? Oh, no.
Okay, so if you have any questions after this call, feel free to follow up with us. You have our regular contacts at BindTuning, but you can also reach out directly to me, Beatriz, at bindtuning.com, or also to Francisca or Eleni. We are totally available to schedule a call with you to learn more about the processes that you have in place that you would like to automate, and see how Automate 365 can help address your requirements for automation at scale. So please let us know. We would really like to be able to help. So with this, thank you so much, and I hope to see you in an upcoming webinar. Thank you.